Halo, Mas. Itu nang atendi ono beberapa orang, antara lain Samnake, kemudian yang ada airnaf-airnafnya undang masuk, Mas.
Ya, oke.
Selamat malam, Adinda di Kanada. Selamat pagi, Jakarta.
Selamat pagi, Kakanda. Apa kabar? Sehat selalu?
Alhamdulillah, terima kasih. Salam sehat.
Salam sehat. Mas, berkenan diskusi sedikit?
Apa tuh? Boleh.
Ya, Pak Fen, maaf, ini kita udah on, Pak.
Ya nggak apa-apa lah.
Ya.
Pak Tevi, di belakang ini nanti kita merencanakan apa? Cyber Security and Air Traffic Management. Kiranya berkenan menjadi salah satu yang turut sumbang urun rembuk.
Siap, kita pikirkan.
Siap. Terima kasih, Kakanda.
Ya, halo. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam, Kakanda. Apa kabar? Sehat selalu?
Siap, Dinda. Siap, senior, Pak Om Telvi. Waduh, alhamdulillah sehat semua nih. Jam berapa di sana, Om
Kami
Aven?
berjarak 12 jam. Kami jam 8 malam. PC salah.
Oke. Jadi kita berapa lama nih? 2 jam aja ya?
Ya, betul, Mas.
Siap. Oke. Baru berapa nih? Baru 82. Assalamualaikum Pak Iksan. Pak Tevi.
Selamat pagi, Pak Direktur Siti, Pak Bambang.
Siap, apa kabar? Ini ada Pak Tatang nih, Pak Iksan Tatang juga nih. Pak Bernard, halo.
Selamat pagi, Pak Bambang.
Selamat pagi, Pak Bernard, apa kabar?
Baik, Pak. Sehat, Pak.
Sehat selalu, harus.
Siap, amin, alhamdulillah.
Amin.
Oke Pak Tatang, Pak Cucuk, Pak Alven.
Pagi Pak Wendy.
Selamat pagi Pak Wendy.
Selamat bergabung Pak Wendy.
Ya, selamat pagi Pak.
Ya, siap.
Oke, selamat pagi Jakarta, good evening Montreal. Welcome again to the webinar. Hari ini kita akan melangsungkan webinar dengan tajuk Sharing Session Normal Operations Safety Survey atau NOSS for Navigation Service Provider. Setelah bergabung dengan kita antara lain sebagai speaker yaitu Bapak Bambang Rianto, Direktur of Safety, Security, and Standardization of Airnav Indonesia. Selamat pagi Pak Bambang Rianto.
Selamat pagi Pak Afen. Selamat malam di Montreal.
Oke, terima kasih kesediaannya untuk kita saling berbagi. Kemudian we have the second speaker, Mr. Vic van der Westhausen, IQ expert. Good evening, Mr. Vic.
Good evening, Doctor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Oke, sedianya kita ada Mr. Herman Pretorius. Beliau adalah IQ ANC, bekerja di ANC Air Navigation Commission Secretariat, tapi masih berusaha untuk meraih kita. Mudah-mudahan dalam kesempatan pertama beliau bisa hadir. Dan kemudian ada speaker berikutnya yaitu Kapten Bernard Partogi Sitorus, Senior Manager Incident Management of Garuda Indonesia. Selamat pagi, Kapten Bernard.
Selamat pagi, Pak Afen. Good evening, Montreal.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Bapak-bapak, Ibu-ibu, sebelum kita beranjak pada acara webinar ini, hari ini webinar ini kita bebaskan dengan menggunakan dua languages, pertanyaan dan komentar diskusi nanti bisa kita sampaikan dalam bahasa Indonesia atau bahasa Inggris. Tentu kita punya satu speaker yaitu Vic Petrus van der Westhausen, namun sebagian besar adalah menggunakan bahasa pengantar bahasa Indonesia. Namun sebelumnya kami akan mengundang ini salah satu kurikulum vitae-nya. Vic van der Westhausen, hari ini beliau adalah International Civil Aviation atau IQ expert, bekerja di banyak pengalaman sebelumnya, ANS Project Management, IQ ANS Provisions, pilot training, beliau punya latar belakang sebagai penerbang juga maupun air traffic controllers dan seterusnya. Hari ini beliau berada di Montreal. Kemudian speaker yang kedua adalah Bapak Bambang Rianto, Director Safety, Security and Standardization, pengalaman sebagai GM di dua unit terbesar yaitu Jakarta Air Traffic Service Center maupun GM Makassar Air Traffic Service Center. Dan berikutnya speaker berikutnya yaitu Kapten Bernard Partogi Sitorus, Senior Manager Incident Management, dengan seperangkat dengan pengalaman-pengalaman di pesawat-pesawat berbadan lebar. Nah, nanti kita sampaikan untuk yang Herman Pretorius. Sebelum kita menginjak pada sesi diskusi, sebelumnya kami akan mengundang CSAS untuk menyampaikan etika kita berwebinar. CSAS kami persilakan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Avancena. I'm Intan Sawitri from CSAS Indonesia. Let me explain the tips and etiquette relating to this webinar in the title of Sharing Station Normal Operation Safety Survey or NOSS for Air Navigation Service Provider. 1. For optimal viewing, access the webinar using a computer with a high-speed internet connection and audio speakers. 2. If you attend the webinar by only using the phone option, there will be insufficient data while you attend our webinar. 3. Make sure that every participant's device on mute mode their microphone upon entry our webinar. 4. We will give some participant time to take some discussion with the panelists by asking some questions. 5. All participants can put their question in Q&A column. 6. CSAS will provide the panelists contact information after the webinar ends. And the last one, CSAS will provide all the participant link to download their own certificate through their own email. Thank you. Back to Mr. Avancena.
Masih mute, Pak Afen. Mohon maaf.
Mohon maaf. Secara teori, sistem pemanduan lalu lintas udara dirancang untuk berfungsi dengan selamat, aman, lancar, dan efisien melalui perangkat pemanduan untuk digunakan, melalui pelatihan yang mengajarkan cara menggunakan sistem dan prosedur tersebut. Pada kenyataannya, sistem pemanduan lalu lintas udara penuh dengan interaksi yang kompleks, dinamis, dan perubahan konstan yang tidak dapat sepenuhnya diantisipasi dalam tahap desain sistem. Normal Operation Safety Survey dianalogikan sebagai pemeriksaan kesehatan operasi. Sistem ini memberikan informasi tentang bagaimana sebenarnya perilaku pelayanan pemanduan lalu lintas udara secara holistik dengan menetapkan observer yang terlatih khusus untuk melakukan pengamatan secara anonim, tidak teridentifikasi, non-predictive observations of controls working position under normal supervision, dan seterusnya. Bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu, diskusi tentang normal operation safety survey ini tentu akan menjadi diskusi yang sangat panjang. Diskusi ini sebenarnya merupakan kelanjutan dari beberapa diskusi yang kami lakukan dari Montreal dan dari Jakarta dengan kawan-kawan di Airnav tentang bagaimana kita akan menerapkan NOSS untuk sistem pelayanan lalu lintas penerbangan di Indonesia. Nah, tanpa untuk memperpanjang prolog dan pendahuluan ini, selanjutnya kami undang Bapak Bambang Rianto, Direktur Safety and Standard, untuk menyampaikan presentasi tentang bagaimana NOSS ini akan diimplementasikan di Airnav Indonesia. Pak Bambang Rianto, the meeting is yours, Pak. You are still in the mute mode, Pak.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, test.
Thank you, clear, Pak. Thank you, Pak.
Mr. Aven. Good evening in Canada to Mr. Vic, and also to all participants, especially for Captain Bernard from Garuda. Okay, slide please. Mana? Belum muncul, Om Aven.
Okay.
So the first slide. Okay, we want to start the presentation. This one is Airnav Indonesia Normal Operation Implementation Plan. So next slide. That's the Indonesian airface. So we have the total area of flight information region is more than 5 million squares. So we divide it with the 2 FIR. The second slide first. We divided it with the 2 FIR. It's the Jakarta FIR and Ujung Pandang FIR. Also we have 33 branches, and also we have more than 32 unit APB, 28 terminal, tower, all of in Indonesia 56 units. Flight information service is 14 units, and also flight information service is 92 units. Also we have the Jason FIR, and the south is we have Melbourne and Brisbane. On the north we have Kinabalu, Manila, and Auckland. Also we have the human resources of operational is around 2,500 operational human resource. Next. Next slide. Hello. Yeah, next slide. So we have the safety policies and a plan. Arab Indonesia safety policies is we have 11 year. Number one is maintain and improve safety performance, and two, ensure an adequate resource and support safety management. Number three, defining safety accountabilities, responsibilities, and authorities. Number four, managing system analysis, hazard incident, serious incident, and accidents. Number five, monitoring SPI and target achievement. Number six, identified hazard and risk management to reach a acceptable level of service. Number seven, managing safety reporting system. Number eight, implementing safety culture based on just culture policy. Number nine, comply to regulation and international standard. Number 10, improving personal competition. And number 11 is promote safety policy to all level in organization. So we have a program on 2020. 2020 is SMS acceptance and SMS implementation plan 2021. So we have program SMS implementation, SMS monitoring, and routine SMS and GASP initiate. And 2020 until 2024, we have SMS continuous improvement. Next. Here's the report, safety reporting culture at ANSP. Since 2013, when we are beginning the new organization of air navigation system in Indonesia, we have 630 reporting on 2013, and now on 2019 we have we received the reporting from our system. Effort is 4,363, and until November 2020 is we have 3,046 reporting. That's so we can see the improvement of the safety reporting culture here since 2013 until 2019. It's good for us. Here, next. That's 5 safety performance indicator target with our corporate achievement in 2020. So we have 5. Number 1 is accident involving ATS services. We have the target ratio is 0. Until now, we have annual ratio is 0. For the loss of separation, near miss due to ATS services, we have a target is ratio not more than 1.54, and until now we have the annual ratio is 1.17. It's on target or achieved. Also number 3, runway incursion improving ATC communication. We have the target is not more than 0.117. So annual ratio is 0 incursion. Number 4, we have the runway incursion involving ATC communication. Also, we have the 0 target, and annual ratio is 0. And number 5 is availability of the telecommunication service, where the target is for the performance of the CNS facility is more than 90%. So our annual percentage is until now is average 99.26%. It's good. Okay, go. Next slide. That's ANS contribution from 2016 until 2020. So we can look, the diagram is descending on 2016. We have 35, and now on 2020, we have only 7 NS contribution for the airforce, runway incursion, runway exertion, and aircraft incidents. That's good for us here. And go ahead, the next slide. No, so we get the conducting normal operation safety culture. Honestly, we just started to implementation is normal operation safety culture here in ANSP Indonesia. Yeah, so NOSS benefit is proactive hazard identification, prioritize safety action, and next until 12 to an understanding controller shortcuts and works arounds. So we have goals after conducting a NOSS. ANSP Indonesia expected will be able to set clear target for safety enhancement of its operation. The effect of the change made can be measured by conducting a follow or a repeat NOSS. In the meantime, the effect of the changes may be noticeable by comparing a specific event trend from the pre and a post node periods. Okay, next. So we have the NOSS implementation plan in ANSP Indonesia. Now we start from October 2020, preparation phase. We have a kickoff meeting, internal workshop, management workshop plan, and also on November until December, we have the enriched reference phase, sharing session, forum group decision, preparing resources, NOSS requirement, operational observation and view and perspective. And we have the target next year on the semester 1. We have the implementation phase conducted NOSS according to management work plan, data collection and verification, reporting analysis, evaluation, follow-up and feedback, continuous routine program. And we have the target on semester 2, 2020, benchmarking and the other. Next. That's all. Thank you very much, Mr. Aven and all the participants.
Thank you, Pak Bambang Rianto. Thank you for very comprehensive presentations. And then we are proceeding to the second speaker. We're inviting Mr. Vic Petrus van der Westhausen to have your presentations. And since seems that Mr. Petrus is still unable to reach our webinar sessions today. And I have the message that Mr. Petrus van der Westhausen will also present it on behalf of Mr. Herman, because seems that Pak Petrus, Mr. Vic and Mr. Herman Petrus has already made some communications. And then Vic are going to present the 2 presentations belong to Mr. Petrus by himself and on behalf of Mr. Herman Pretorius. Okay, Mr. Vic, to make long story become short, now the meeting is yours. Vic, please, time is yours.
Thank you, Doctor. While we're waiting for the slides, I really was impressed with the previous presentation. And you can really see that that a lot has been done by Indonesia and everybody is really on track. And the numbers that I see is improving there, so it's very good. And if I look at your target dates, maybe it's a good time that we explain NOSS to you. And I think if I can ask Daddy just to put the first presentation on for us. What I intend to do tonight, just our time and in the morning your time, is to explain NOSS to you, how ICAO sees it. It doesn't mean that you have to follow it, you know, by letter or by book or by paragraph, but it's a good indication what you are required when you do NOSS. And then thereafter I will do the TEM presentation, because NOSS is really based on it. So what I'm going to do, you will find in the presentation, sometimes there's going to be repetition, and bear with me in the repetition, because it's normally just if I want to highlight something that seems to be important. Thank you, Daddy. The next slide, please. I'm not going to go step for step through the content. As we will go through, you will see it. And before I start with the presentation, in your presentation, if you go into the note pages, you'll find much more detail there as far as every bullet point is concerned. Next page, please. The next, yeah. Now, I'm not going to stand you tonight. Basically, NOSS was started by ICAO in 2003, and NOSS and LOSA, which is the airline equivalent of NOSS, is both based on the threat and error management framework. Now, if we look at the description, the normal operation safety is basically a methodology for the collection of safety data, a normal ATC operation. Somebody sits there next to a air traffic controller, see what he's doing wrong or what could be improved, and they then will divine or design new procedures. A normal operation is really designed as where a traffic controller is working there, and while he's working there, no incidents are reported. You must remember that during a NOSS exercise, you cannot do it during training or when there's check shifts. And by conducting a series of targeted observations of ATC of a specific time, you will then get information which will then be an overview for the organization, which will highlight pertinent threats and errors. The information then will enhance the organization or the service provider, in this case, its ability to proactively, before it happens, make changes to its safety process. Now we go to the relationship. NOSS is really designed to complement safety management. It's not safety management, it's to complement safety data collection. It's not part of safety management, and it should not be seen as that. It adds value because it's not occurrence driven. It's data that you get before incident is reported. You can schedule it at any time. It's really a systematic safety performance and a daily operations, and to provide an overview of the organizational strength and weaknesses. Safety data from NOSS data are not otherwise available. That's the only way you can get it. And NOSS is regarded as a component of ATC safety management system. Thank you. Next slide, please. We look at a purpose. Conducting a NOSS, why are we conducting NOSS? Is to find out what are the more pertinent threats and errors that controllers have to face and manage during a normal operation. Also, if you look at NOSS captures ATC system performance through the eyes of an air traffic controller. It's not somebody else collecting it. And once the information is available, the SMS of the service provider can then propose adjustments in the operational processes. And by conducting, as it was previously said, a follow-up NOSS, you can then see how effectively the new procedures that you've implemented works. Next one, please. We look at the benefits that were also mentioned, so I'm not going to go through too, but proactively hazard identification, it enhanced understanding, identify areas of strength, etc. There's quite a lot of them, and you can read through it in your own time. Next slide, please. Now, I'm using the word prevalent here, and the next couple of slides but all have the heading prevalent, which means that's information that's widely used by everyone. Now, if you look at the specific objectives of NOSS implementation, so after conducting NOSS, the service provider would be able to set clear targets for safety enhancement of its operations. If you look at the framework of NOSS, NOSS is based on, and you must never forget it, on the threat and error management. They work hand in hand. And that was developed by a university in Texas. TEM is a conceptual framework, and it assists in the understanding of interrelationship between the safety of the human performance and the challenging part of the operational context. Now, if we look at the prerequisites for NOSS, there must be careful preparation before you can do the agreement. There should be agreement between the service provider and the Air Traffic Controllers Association. This agreement must be non-disciplinary. So if you find that a controller has done something wrong, it shouldn't be used as a disciplinary method. This mechanism also secure collected data and that prevent that data from being misused if it gets in the wrong hands. NOSS data is not designed to use used for incident investigation. You cannot use this. This is a separate issue on its own. And the process is independent from NOSS for capturing safety data, which is SMS. Next one. So if you look at NOSS data from program, it's intended for the use by safety management of air traffic services, not the safety management as in general. Where is NOSS conducted? Conducted in a normal working operation position of air traffic controller. And the observers, and you will see, I'll touch on it later again, must be unobstructed. They must not be sitting in front of the air traffic controller. The air traffic controller must work there without knowing that they're there. Now, NOSS observations should not be held while you're busy on the job training. A typical session is normally about an hour and 30 minutes, and the observed controllers must know they are being observed. So that controller that sits there know he's being observed what he's doing. And controller participation, very important. It's voluntary. You cannot force them to do that. Next one, please. Now, if you look at the observers selected, you normally select your observers from a pool of qualified air traffic controllers. It's normally a joint effort by the staff representatives from the ATC and the management. The observers provide optimal data, what you require, as we discussed earlier. And consideration should be given to selecting candidates from other facilities and other positions, not necessarily from one center. That must also be selected from non-operational instructor groups. It enhances the perception of validity of data because now it's one air traffic controller obtaining information, and the air traffic controllers would be more at rest knowing where the information comes. Thank you. Next one, please. We will go into training a little bit more detail towards the end. I'm just going to touch on here. It's of course a very important element. And normally it's a week course for the observers. They base their training on framework, and the last slide of the training is they do exercises, and then they analyze these exercises to make sure that the observer that would undertake the next session knows exactly what to do. Next one, please. The report is, the data that you collect must be de-identified format. You cannot identify a traffic controller or the position, and it must guarantee anonymity of the controllers. The verification, the data to be performed by selected observers and key staff from the organization. Specialists will analyze the data. Not everybody can do it. And the detailed report afterwards is then presented to the organization. Next one, please. The data that you obtain there is owned by the service provider. It's nobody else's data. It's very sensitive and could be potentially abusive. Be very careful. The site where you will store this information must be carefully selected. And this is where your national legislation comes in, because that might dictate where you can do it. And if you have data benchmarking comparisons who have been done, also the legislation could have effect on this. Now let's look at preparing NOSS. And I put this blank slide here just to get a sort of a difference between one section of NOSS and the next one. Now, if we're organizing, Rob, you must obtain the support from a controller workforce. Otherwise, you can have a lot of problems. You must establish a project steering committee to oversee the preparation and the implementation. And it's normally from the controllers, from the management, from the operational environment. The project manager will be responsible for the briefings, advising the service provider what the findings are. He will promote NOSS, and he acts also as a troubleshooter. Next one, please. I see. Sorry, okay, let's. At this part of the operation, the target selection is that if you look at NOSS, if you do it in more than one area controller, you can get a lot of detailed information, but you must be careful that you don't go too wide. And the ATS provider should identify the target of the different areas for NOSS. Next one, please. Okay. Now, if you look at the scope of NOSS, decide how many observations will be required. Too few observations, you do not have enough data really to analyze. Too many observations, you affect the motivation of the observers. The number of observers is normally dictated by the number of working positions that you have in tower approach an area. Example, tower environment, 1 ground control position, 2 runways, etc. You can conduct up to 30 observations on the ground control position and another on the aerodrome control. If you have area control and you have 5 sectors, you can do 25 to 30 observations to get the information. Next one, please. Now, if we look at the duration, now normally how long does it take? Because it cannot just last for infinitum. At a project level, it's normally between 6 and 9 months that you collect the information. If you look at the operational staff, that's normally a period of about 2 to 4 months. And if you look at the data collection, that's determined by the number of observations that you schedule. A general guideline, collect the data in a period of 1 and 2 months. That's a general one. Data collection period, not necessarily a continuous process. It doesn't have to be starting on day 1 and end on day 30. You can do it over a longer period than 2 months. Next one, please. If we look at the timing, consideration should be given where to fit it in. You might have new projects, new information, new equipment, etc. So you must take that in mind, to keep that in mind when you start with a NOSS project, because there's a lot of training involved while they get familiar with the equipment. If there's a lot of surplus staff, excellent time to do it. The NOSS Project Steering Committee will have to decide the time frame. Languages, now there's pros and cons. If you do it in your own language, everybody understands it. It's so much easier, but you might have a problem when you want to benchmark because you will have to translate it into a different language. Next one, please. We look at the NOSS briefings. The purpose of NOSS in the intended outcome, where the NOSS process fits into the organization safety management system. That needs to be clear. The extent of the planned NOSS, including the locations and the time frames where you're going to do it. Explain NOSS operating characteristics, as you will see later, and the project manager name and details must be available. Thank you. Next one. If we look at observer selection, you should look at people that has professional credibility and trust, analytical qualities, open-minded, motivators, and sound adjustment. The observers who are not rated at the working positions they observe usually produce a better report. They say if you take somebody from another center and you put them with area control center in Jakarta, because he's not very familiar, he will give you a better report, because controllers sometimes do procedures for the environment where the other one is slightly different, and he will stick to the book. Next one, please. Your code of conduct. The observers, while they're there, must be unobstructive. They should not be seen to interfere. They are not there to assess the performance of the air traffic controller. They're also not there to interfere with the ongoing operations. The incident during NOSS observation, if there's any incident at any time, the NOSS observation is required to stop right there. And if a controller turns around and he says, I don't want to be observed, that will be his right, and you will have to do it another time with somebody else. Next one, please. If you look at the final point and you look at points that you want to consider, what does the organization hope or the service provider hope to achieve from us? And is the senior management expected for possibly the undesired findings? Or is there any group within the organization that could use this as a political tool to advance their own agenda? Is the service provider prepared to share that with the staff, whether it's good or bad? Is the organization committed to address the issues highlighted by NOSS? Once you find out what you're going to do, are you going to address it and fix it, or you're going to leave it? I think the thing here at the bottom with the notice, avoid overreaction. Go through everything, must determine why particular patterns of threats and errors exist. Now, the next one is the NOSS characteristics. Next slide, please. This is like on-the-job training, over-the-shoulder observations. That's similar to on-the-job training. The observer must make short notices. The more notes he makes, the more nervous the controller is going to get. capture the data from normal operations only. And particular observations terminate and data will be included in a NOSS report. If there's a safety incident, it stops right there. Next one, please. How do you do a joint management and controller association? You must get support from the service provider, management, and the controllers. That will enhance the controller workforce support. They will support you once they know what's going on. There must be a signed agreement so that between the traffic controllers and the service provider. And the support of the controller association is crucial to the success of NOSS. Next one, please. Participation, it must be voluntary. If it's not voluntary, you have a problem. The observer or the observed controller, both must be voluntary. The ATC must have the option to allow you to observe him or to refuse it during the shift. And there must be no record of his identity. Next one, please. Here we talk about de-identified and confidential and non-disciplinary action. The ATC during a NOSS observation, name is not recorded. Only information that's recorded is the observation of what you see and the time that you've started and the time that this project ended. The observed date should not be there. The observer identity, like the ATC on duty, his identity should not be registered. It's confidential. The NOSS program should not be used for disciplinary action. Thank you. Next one, please. Now, if we're looking at a systematic observation, NOSS is designed for observers to see threats and errors and undesired states. That's the three items that they will be looking during a normal operation. The observers will be trained to recognize threats, errors, undesired states, and undesired state. All three of these items I will explain later. Observers take minimal notes, like we said, and the forms will be structured. So it's normally in code to help the observer as well as the team that analyze it afterwards. Next one, please. Although I'll get a little bit into training here, I'll go in more detail towards the end. The observers must be trained on TEM. They must use the NOSS observation forms and apply appropriate codes. Observations must be done in specific workplaces, and they must know how to act when safety occurrence happen during observation. They call it the stop rule. If there's an incident, you stop and you walk away from that position. The candidate observers to perform at least 2 practice observations and complete the reports before you can send him solo to continue with observations. Now, the next one, trusted data. As I said earlier, it belongs to the service provider. It's a responsibility of the service provider to identify the location where the data will be stored. And here your national legislation plays a role. You will have to find out whether your national legislation determines anything in that line. Next one, please. If we look at the verification process, the data verification process involves 4 or 5 key persons normally from the NOSS project and may last up to 5 days. The purpose of data verification is to ensure that all the data from the observations are coded correctly and consistently before it's analyzed. Participants in the data verification process review all observation reports. And in the verification process, at the end, extensive use must be made of the applicable ATC procedures for observed NOSS. Next one, please. Data-derived targets. In a final report presents the analysis and interpretation to the service provider management. It must contain clear indications of safety management system in air traffic services. The report assists the safety management system to determine effective ways of providing or implement new procedures and strategies. And it enables the SMS to identify specific areas of safety improvements. Next one, please. Feedback of results to the controllers. NOSS report goes first to the service provider, management, and must also be communicated to the air traffic controller, which was observed, included to the air traffic controller unit. It could also be shared with other units, and because ATC is interested, you observe him, you do something, you change it, and there's no feedback, you will lose his support. Next one, please. We come to NOSS observer training and data collection. Next one. Like I said earlier, it should not be more than 5 days continuous training, and it's normally done in a group. It's provided by the NOSS facilitator or the project manager. The first 2 days is normally spent in the classroom. Then you have test observations, normally day 3 and 4, and feedback to the individual operators that's under training, day 5. The first solo observation that observer does, the facilitator may continue to provide feedback to him. Next one, please. Here again, we're looking at data collection, and we're looking at the overview of the NOSS methodology. It explains where you must explain where it fits into safety management. There must be a detailed explanation of TEM framework. Case studies to improve the understanding of components of TEM framework. Explanation also of the observation reporting forms, including the code books, and examples of good and poor narratives must be highlighted. Next one. We'll look at the observer preparation. If we look at classroom training, the explanation of the observation protocol includes a stop rule. That's removed. They say incident, you stop, you walk away. If the air traffic controller say, I don't want you to continue observing me, you take your stuff and you walk away. Assignments of location positions that will be observed must be shared with the observer well in advance. Communication around arrangement must be between the facilitator, the project manager during the observation period. And logistical details. Should he travel somewhere? All the items that you need to address. Next one, please. There's 2 main elements here that I would like to highlight. One is knowledge of TEM. It's required. I mean, you cannot do NOSS if you don't know TEM. To conduct fruitful NOSS observation provides instruction on how to use the observation tool. And then the practical observation skill, training and practical skills, essential for that. Next one, please. Now, here's a few guidelines. Like I said, and we mentioned it before, it must be unobstructed. And the observer should not enter in long discussions with the ATC that's on duty. They must not take extensive notes. All of the above makes a big issue if the observer plays the main role. Next one, please. You have forms. Of course, the NOSS form is very important. That's what the observer has. It works in codes. It gets analyzed afterwards, and that's how they determine what to do next. Now, information in the form should convey information. So once somebody reads it afterwards, it presents a clear picture of what happened. The evaluative and judgmental expressions should always be avoided. You are not there to judge. You are there to record. Observation reports must be completed immediately after the observation and not 2 days thereafter. And avoid writing any information report that could identify the individual. Next one, please. The use of the code is on worksheets to contain observer assigned codes. The ICAO NOSS manual contains all that. I have not brought it in. You can go and read it in a manual. Codes for threats is at 3 different levels. It's the event description, the code, and then the lowest level. And in the observation in the database, the threat types and threat categories are respectively middle, highest level codes are available. Next one, please. Now, a narrative, and the way a narrative is really the written document. So the observer must provide a rich narrative, something that they can get a lot of information for. It must provide contextual information, what occurred during the observation. They must speak of all the threats and errors in the undesired state study observed. And there's basically 3 pieces, and the ones that's at the bottom. The descriptions of each threat, area, and undesired state should be given. The observer and the response should indicate how, if the event was either detected, acted upon, what action, if any, was taken to manage the situation, and the outcome, how was the event resolved. Next one, please. Data de-identifications. Like I said previously, the observer or the ATC not record the names of any individuals. Only information that will be recorded is what happened at that sector and the beginning and the end times. The observer forms is in code, and observer's name must not be recorded as well. Next one, please. If you look at the team strategies, the observers not to record the names, as we said, the NOSS facilitator and the data analyst constantly monitor the quality of the data. The facilitator and the data analyst identify any sensitive issues that might to be dealt with sooner than later. And then afterwards, the the analyst which would analyze this report frequently ascertain that incoming data provide sufficient information. And then leadership and interpersonal skills, very important. If you want to have success, your people that goes there needs to have these two skills. Next one, please. I'm not going to go, the NOSS forms are not going to go too much in it. It's self-explanatory. You fill it in the way it should be in, should be conveyed there. The observation should be completed immediately, etc. And again, avoid mentioning individuals. Next one, please. In conclusion, what does NOSS do? It identify threats with the operating environment, identify weaknesses in airspace design, check quality and usability of procedures, identify problems with controller and equipment interfaces. It assesses the degree of transference of training to the line. It understands the controller shortcuts and workarounds. It provides additional insight into known problems. It make comparisons across units and facilities. And it assess safety margin and base rates. Ladies and gentlemen, I went through it very quickly. As I said earlier, in your note pages, there's quite a lot of detail there. And alternately, you have my email. You can always send me an email or ask me questions. Thank you, Dr. Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Vic. I think to continue with the presentation of Herman Pretorius, please, the meeting is yours on behalf of Mr. Herman Pretorius.
Thank you so much. If Daddy can put on the TEM presentation. Now here we're going to go through and we're going to, this is the tool that you use for NOSS to determine all the information that NOSS wants you to obtain. So we go to the next slide, which is the content. Here again, I'm not going to spend too much time. We will address each and every heading here in more detail as we go along. So we're going to the next slide with the objective. What is the main objective of TEM? The main objective is to enhance aviation safety and efficiency. This is achieved by providing an operational, relevant, and highly intuitive framework for understanding and managing system and human performance. Remember, you have two players here, if I can call it that. The one side, the human, the other side, the system. So TEM and NOSS are operational tools which was designed to primarily, but not exclusively, used by safety managers in their endeavors to identify and manage safety issues as they may affect safety and efficiency of the operations. Now we go to the description. TEM is really overarching safety concept regarding aviation operations and human performance. The framework is a conceptual model that assists in understanding an operational perspective, the relationship between safety and human performance in a dynamic and challenging operational context. The TEM framework focuses simultaneously in the operational context and the people discharging the operational duties. If you look at the framework, they have two items there, or two subsections, which is descriptive and diagnostic. Descriptive means it captures the human and the system performance in the normal operational context, resulting in a realistic description. And diagnostic, because it allows quantifying the complexities of the operational context in relation to the description of human performance in that context and vice versa. If we look at the threats, remember I said that this TEM framework is basically based on threats, errors, and undesirable states. So we're starting with threats. It's defined as events or errors that occur beyond the influence of the air traffic controller, which must be managed to maintain a margin of safety. And that could be anticipated threats, weather. We all know what weather does in air traffic control. Unexpected threats, pilots carrying out instructions that were intended for another pilot, or actual threats, unserviceable equipment while the controller is working. Next one. The second element, which is errors. Now, errors is defined as actions or inactions by the ATC. He's doing something or he's not doing something that led to deviation from the organizational or ATC intentions. There could be a spontaneous error, which not detecting a readback error by the pilot, or procedural errors, ATC incorrectly executing a procedure, or equipment handling errors, the ATC incorrectly handling with the equipment, or communication error, the ATC incorrectly interact with people. Next one, please. The third element here is the undesired states. Here it's defined as errors defined as action or inactions by the air traffic controller that led to an undesired situation or operational conditions. Often this is the last stage before an incident and an accident. It's important to establish a clear differentiation between undesired state and outcome. The undesired state is between normal, operational, and the outcome. And the outcome is really where you record your incident and your accident. Next one, please. I'm not going to go too much detail. You'll find it in the ICAO document. It shows you the flow of information when they do the threat and error management. Then we go to the next slide. Countermeasures. ATC must employ countermeasures to keep threats, errors, or undesired states from reducing the margin of safety in the operation. Countermeasures are not all necessarily air traffic control actions. Some are hard or resource provided by the aviation system. That could be minimum sector altitude warning, a short-term conflict alert, a standard operating procedures, briefings, professional training, etc. Next one, please. Other countermeasures could be more directly related to the human contribution to the safety of the ATC operation. Example, personal strategies or tactics. There are 4 categories. The one is the team countermeasures. That's leadership and communication environment. It's essential for the flow of information and team participation. Planning countermeasures. Planning, preparation, briefings, and contingency management. Essential for managing the unanticipated or unexpected threats. Execution countermeasures. Monitor, cross-check, scan, flip flight strips, etc. Essential for error detection. Review and modify countermeasures. Evaluation of plans, queries, essential for managing the changing conditions. In summary, TEM framework captures the dynamic activity of operational ATC crew in the real-time conditions. Then we go to the next slide. Internal threats. What is internal threats? Internal threats, the equipment, malfunctions, workplace factors. They could be glare, reflections, the room, the temperatures too hot, the air conditions are working. There's a lot of noise. Procedures could be really red tape, long-winded, inappropriate procedures. Or other controllers, they may engage, and we're all familiar with that as air traffic controllers, in social conversations, creating a distraction. Next one, please. We look at the airborne threats. Pilots, here, an example is not advise ATC of certain maneuvers, like avoiding weather. The aircraft performance is not adhering to the normal performance. Instead of climbing 2,000 feet or descent 2,000 feet a minute, it increases or decreases that. Radio communication, readback errors by pilots and ATC, both of them not being picked up. Traffic, non-routine aircraft activity. All of a sudden, there's survey, there's calibration flights, parachute jumping, etc., and that's another threat. Then we go to environmental threats. What is environmental threats? Weather, most common one, we all know it is air traffic controllers, thunderstorms. Geographical environment, high terrain or obstacles in the ATC area of responsibility. Yeah, I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can see here's quite a number of them, like equipment handling errors, radar usage, selecting inappropriate radar source. The next one is procedural errors, hand over at the working position, omitted or incorrect items. Next slide, please. Communication errors, ATC to pilot, a missed call, misinterpretation, not hearing the readback, etc. Next slide, please. Now we're coming to the undesired state. Remember, we've got the threats, the errors, and now the undesired states. Yeah, what the examples here on the ground, aircraft taxiing where they should not or where they should stop, or the other way around. Aircraft entering a taxi where they should not. Aircraft proceeding to another gate, which is different from where they should have gone. Aircraft making a pushback at a time they should not. Aircraft vacating the runway at a position other than where it was instructed to clear that. Then we go to the next one, examples of airborne undesired. This is the aircraft not turning when it should, or it turns where it should not. the aircraft climbing or descending to another level of altitude, which is wrong. The aircraft not reaching the required flight level altitude at the time that he was required to do that. The aircraft flying to a different waypoint, a wrong one. Or the aircraft flying at different speeds, what he was, you're all familiar with speed restrictions. Okay, next slide, please. Here again, I'm not going to go through it, or it's too time consuming. You can see the communication, that's team climate at the moment, planning, and communication environment for open communication. And the planning is briefing, that we're all familiar. Next slide, please. The next slide is execution, monitor and cross-check, workload management. Read through it. It's self-explanatory, so it's nothing difficult to explain. Then we integrate TEM into the safety management. Threats exist, and it needs to be managed. ATC safety manager know this particular threat is managed by the controller on a day-to-day basis. Specific areas where it's managed without significant problems, no requirement for the safety manager to take action. Or the safety manager might be familiar with a specific threat and needs to know how the unit manage these threats. Next one, please. Now we're looking at LOSA. Now why I put this file in, because sometimes people confuse TEM and or rather NOSS with LOSA. Now LOSA is the equivalent of NOSS, but it's for airlines. It's a tool that's used to collect information for threats of pilots. Next slide, please. NOSS. Now, NOSS, as we explained, or maybe I should have had a slide earlier on, is to pursue the development of a similar tool after they looked at NOSS, but this one is specific for air traffic control, and it's called NOSS. Next slide, please. In conclusion, threat and error management, or TEM, is a safety management approach that assumes that ATC and pilots will naturally make mistakes and account risky situations during operations. Rather than try to avoid these threats and error, its primary focus is on teaching ATC how to manage these issues and to avoid impairing safety. TEM was developed as a product of a collective aviation and industry experience. And TEM is the product of a combined use of a systematic-based individual and team countermeasures. Thank you, Dr. Sen.
Thank you, Mr. Vic, for very comprehensive presentations. And ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned by Mr. Vic, a lot of information that we have already gained, and I believe this webinar is only like the first initiative, which are going to be followed by the next discussions, more deep discussions. And for the last speakers, I'm inviting Mr. Bernard Partogi for the presentations about LOSA. As mentioned by Mr. Vic, LOSA is equivalent by NOSS only for the airlines industry. Okay, Mr. Bernard Partogi, the meeting is yours.
Thank you, Pak Alvin. Good morning, everyone, and good evening in Montreal. Especially, we don't have a specific presentations that we have prepared for these meetings, but it's kindly a kind of explanation about our specific program, which is similar with what we call as NOSS in perspective of air traffic controllers. And for us in Garuda Indonesia, as an alliance or the air operators, we develop also as the elements of the safety management system implementation, or we call as the SMS implementations. One of the elements as the proactive elements, we also develop what we call as LOAS. Maybe most people may know in the aviation industries as called as LOSA, which is well developed from the University of Texas, which is observed by the ICAO and also the IFALPA till today. But for us in Garuda Indonesia, we we develop a kind of similar programs to do a kind of spatial observation and assessments that we call as LOAS. LOAS is a line operation assessment systems. There are several items which is slightly different with, between what the LOSA, which ICAO observe in any kind of ICAO documents. The first one is the LOAS information is continually gathered from our flight operations, while the LOSA is limited only the campaign of the observation itself. And yeah, we usually we don't limit the number of the observations. Every kind of observation we do as many as possible based on what the risk identification that we define, either from our reporting systems and also from our data analysis from the flight data monitoring, or usually what we call as FOCA. The second one is the LOAS is complete airline in-house programs, which is currently in Garuda, we develop in-house program from the beginning developing until we run till today. And also the LOSA is a program with some external observers and analytic. The third one, slightly different with the baseline of LOSA program, is we have a keyword indicate cluster of the concerns. So we're clustering many kinds of behavior markers to identify where the risk could be happen, not only in the flight tech activity scope only, but any kind of any other aspect which is may involve in the safe of flight operation itself. The last one, which is might slightly different with the LOSA, is our LOAS is to measure the following operational domains, as I mentioned on the cockpit operations, not only in the cockpit operation, but also we observe the operational support, the cabin operations, and operating environment, which is such as the air traffic control, communications, and operational aspects. So in this goal, Garuda Indonesia ran the LOAS program to aim or to developing the data-driven solutions to improve overall a kind of systemic safety aspects. And the other thing is to provide any kind of research base, which is system-wide investigation, may help the investigations which is required, any kind of occurrences that we need to investigate to gather the data and to find out what the root cause is. And also we try to research the operational issues which is may affect the flight safety, including the aircraft design features. The other thing is of course, to reduce the risk of aircraft operations in other, not only to see the cockpit perspective, which is also the other perspective may more contribute the risk safety of the operations. And the last one is the to help the optimize the Garuda Indonesia operation, of course. So there are two main activity which is include in our LOAS program operations, which is the first one is the flight observation activity itself. The second one is the data analysis. So the term of conduct of the flight observation is exactly similar with how the ICAO run the NOSS, which is as the SMS implementation as a proactive elements to identify the hazard, to identify the threat that we have in our operational aspects, is with we use the TEM method as well. So the threat and error management as one fundamental methods that we use to run the LOAS. The last point is the Garuda Indonesia also run the LOAS program, will generate the list of operational risks as a result of many human factors and also the behavior, any kind of behavior deficiencies that are may analyze the collective with those identified through our source such as international safety reporting system and safety and also the security audit. So there are some elements that we do as a proactive element in SMS implementations, which is LOAS is one of the elements to proactive identify any kind of hazard or threat which may be in place in surrounding of our operational aspect and our operational scope also, of course. And the data from the observation are retrained in certain period and medium to ensure the effective security as well. So I think that's the baseline of our LOAS program. Maybe mostly in general aviation industry, acknowledged as called as LOSA, which is documented in ICAO documents and any other regulations manuals. But currently till today, even more than the last 10 years, we run this kind of operational assessment of an observation program we call as LOAS. So there are some slightly different what the fundamental items, which is as a main objective of the LOSA, but we try to emphasize the LOSA main product to be more comprehensive to other perspective, may contribute the safety of the flight. I think that's it for me. That's the main idea of our program, which is the last quote from me is the NOSS, which is as a topic that we discussed today, is exactly aligned with the LOAS program that we run. It's been even more than 10 years in Garuda Indonesia. Thank you, and maybe any further questions we may discuss in the discussion session. Thank you, Pak Aben.
Thank you, Captain Bernard Partogi, for very important information about LOAS. Previous days ago, I have made some discussion with some senior officer from ANSP Indonesia, that this initiative for NOSS implementations, I believe we have to create something not exactly same as NOSS. And what is happened with the airlines? If airline have a LOSA and Garuda, then having LOAS. And I believe we have to create something like NOSS Perjuangan or something like that. So, for the next sessions, I'm inviting some participants to have response, comment, and others to the speakers and having discussions. In here listed several names. I'm inviting the first four for the first response, maximum 3 minutes. Number one is Mr. Novi Pantarianto and Samatalinake, both from ANSP Indonesia. And the third one, I'm inviting Captain Prita Wijaya. Selamat pagi, Captain Prita. Okay. And then the fourth, I'm inviting Captain Wamildan Thani dari from Batik Air. Selamat pagi, Pak Wamildan.
Selamat pagi, Pak.
Yeah. Okay. For the first response, and at the end, don't worry for the speakers, you may have like the final conclusions. Each one of you are going to have like another 10 minutes per each maximum to give, to have like a closing statement regarding to the response of the respondents. So the other respondents, I'm inviting you to have in the chatting rooms, you may raise your hands and then our colleagues are going to contact you to list it for the next respondents. I'm inviting from Judge, Mats, and other brands of Airnav Indonesia. Okay, the first sessions for 3 minutes, I'm inviting Pak Novi Pantarianto. Pak Novi, the meeting is yours.
Thank you, Pak Fen. Good morning, everyone. Selamat pagi in Jakarta time, and good evening for Canada. First of all, we'd like to express our thank you for Pak Fen and panelist, Mr. Rafiq, for this very good presentation that we have. As Pak Afen said, that these initiatives come from Airnav Indonesia as an Airnav policy to enhance the safety SMS implementation for the next future, following the Global Aviation Safety Program. My question is for Mr. Fick. I'm quite interesting about your presentation that it is voluntary for the controllers to be involved for this NOSS survey. Is a very brand new for us that usually survey is a random, and some cases that is we make a communication before, but this for voluntary, that do we have a special strategic or special approach to eliminate the rejection for the controllers? And previously, Airnav Indonesia, we have a survey, but for the customer satisfaction index survey, the survey is a joint survey with INACA, Indonesia National Air Association, Air Carrier Association, sorry. Is a joint survey that we capture any information from the pilot regarding what we already have delivered to our customers. And NOSS is one step ahead for us. So we need more explanation about this issue, since the target is by the next year. I think that will be all for me, Mr. Afen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Novi. For the second response, I'm inviting Pak Samnake. Good morning, Pak Sam. Pak Nake. Pak Samatali Nake. Okay. Seems that Pak Samnake still have some difficulties. Probably we can switch to the next, but I'm still keeping Pak Nake for the questions and response. I'm proceeding to Captain Prita Wijaya. Captain Prita, your 3 minutes is begin.
Selamat malam Pak Afen. Senang ketemu
malam,
lagi
Pak.
dengan Bapak. Good evening gentlemen in Montreal. Selamat pagi teman-teman semua. Terima kasih atas kesempatan ini. Forum ini sangat menarik sekali karena bicara tentang sesuatu yang baru, terutama buat teman-teman di Airnav. Saya sendiri kebetulan punya pengalaman mengenai bagaimana merun program ini dari awal dan bagaimana menjaganya juga. Ya, itu aja. Nah, tadi yang disampaikan Pak Afen tadi ada yang menarik, bahwa memang kita harus mempertimbangkan culture kita. Nah, ini saya hanya share dari pengalaman saya yang lalu, bahwa salah satu yang kita consider adalah seleksi para observer yang akan melakukan tadi NOSS tadi itu. Di airline, di tempat saya dulu, kita spesifik itu kita menggunakan para junior first officer. Jadi bukan yang instruktur, bukan yang pejabat, pokoknya bukan siapa-siapa. Dan prinsipnya observer di sana itu seperti lalat yang nempel di tembok. Ya, kita cuma foto aja dan kita train betul tuh para observer seperti itu. Dan hasilnya sangat luar biasa. Karena mereka hadir di sana sebagai junior gitu, mereka tidak dianggap threat oleh yang mau di-observe. Nah, itu juga mungkin sesuatu yang bisa nanti didiskus sama Kapten Bernard. Ini Pak Bernard memang yang sekarang yang meran program Aloas ini di Garuda. Ini menarik sekali. Jadi ini kalau kita contoh di tempat kita pakai itu. Aslinya sih memang itu cek pilot boleh jadi observer, para senior yang udah pengalaman. Tapi di tempat saya dulu di sana, kita memutuskan sesuai dengan culture kita pakai para junior. Tapi syaratnya satu, para junior first officer ini tempat kita dulu itu memang sudah paham sekali SOP, dan mereka orang-orang yang memang ya komprehensif lah pengetahuannya gitu. Nah, yang berikutnya lagi adalah sebelum program itu dijalankan, itu sangat penting sekali sosialisasi tentang konsep threat and error management ini. Ini perlu waktu itu. Kita dulu sebelum melakukan itu, kita ada 2 tahun itu sosialisasi dalam bentuk training threat and error management, sehingga nanti pada waktu pelaksanaannya para orang-orang di lapangan itu bisa terima. Mungkin sementara itu Pak Aven dari saya, terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Oke, terima kasih Kapten Prita. Informasinya sangat bermanfaat, dan saya rasa kalaupun nanti kita akan terus melanjutkan NOSS ini, saya pikir NOSS perjuangan yang harus kita buat, sama seperti LOAS untuk LOSA. Nah, for the next responses, for the next 3 minutes, I'm inviting Captain Wamil dan Sani from Batik Air. Pak Sani, for the 3 minutes, the meeting is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Aven, and good morning, everybody in Indonesia, and Mr. Vic from Montreal. This is a very good initiative from ANSP, which is in Batik Air itself. We have gone through for the last 3 IOSA audit, and again, the word of LOSA is coming through on those 3 audits. And we have also, like Mr. Aven said, that maybe LOSA perjuangan, but again, the auditor, they didn't accept. They didn't accept. No. LOSA must be full. We have a very detailed program, like what University of Texas did. So, but again, we conduct the LOSA perjuangan, like you said, we conduct the surveillance for capturing the problem, the threat and error in the cockpit for the pilot, with the baseline in normal operation. Again, in normal operation, we conduct the regular surveillance in the cockpit and do the annual line check again for normal operation. So currently, we conduct the program of pilot performance enhancement program, that we take the data from FDA, and then from the simulator, and also from the attitude, because we think that the attitude of pilot itself is very, very important, because we know someone with strict attitude, with the good looking environment, they will conduct a very good procedure. So we monitor those 3 items from the flight itself, by the FDA data, and then by the simulator training, and also by the attitude. So again, the point is to proactive safety management system. Since the number 4th edition of ICAO Doc 9859, that there is no predictive approach again, but we concluded that this one is also in the proactive measures from the airline. And again, if our fellow from the AirNav can establish this NOSS, so it will make our skies more safely. That's all. Maybe I can share to the audience, Pak Aven. Thank you very much, and good job for AirNav, and maju terus untuk AirNav. Thank you. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Pak Kapten Wamil dan Sani. For all of the participants, if I saw the question and answer, there's so many technical questions. And for your information, if you register to the webinar, we are going to send you all of the documents, such as Annex 19, 9734, Safety Oversight Manual, 9859, Safety Management Manual, 9910 NOSS and Circular 314 threat and error management for you for free to as the reference. So some information you will gain from those documents. And for the next respondents, I'm inviting Pak Samnake. Pak Samnake, are you there? Pak Nake, are you there? Probably Pak Nake still have difficulties. Pak Nake, are you there? Okay. Okay, seems that Pak Nake, you are still in the mute mode. Anda masih mute, Pak. Oke.
Oke.
Kembali ke mute mode lagi, Pak. Pak Nake masih mute, Pak.
Okay. Good morning, all.
Good morning, Pak Nake.
Good morning. Sorry for the inconvenience, but I'm forced to do another tools right now. Okay, thank you, Mr. Raven. Thank you, Mr. Vic, for your fabulous presentation, both the NOSS and the TAN subject. Regarding this NOSS, in line with what Captain Bernard said, that they have developed their own LOSA, and for us also in Indonesia, we will develop our own NOSS. As we know, that we understand that there are 3 items to be considered in ATC service. NOSS is, NOSS is a traffic controller in air traffic controller environment. And the 3 items to be considered is the human, it means the ATC, the procedure, and the air navigational aid. So parallel to this NOSS, we will develop also the program to review our current instrument approach procedure, and also to establish a team who will monitor the performance of air navigational aid. All we mean for this 3 program is to identify the practical drift in ATC environment by NOSS, in the procedure by reviewing the international the instrument approach procedure, and identify the practical drift by monitoring the air navigational aids such as instrument landing system, VOR, and so on. So my question is, do you have any opinion or any idea of this program? The NOSS will be done parallel to the review the instrument approach procedure and monitoring the navigational aid. That's all. Thank you, Pak Aven. Thank you, Pak Dedi, for this Zoom meeting. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you, Pak Nake. We still have time since Pak Bambang Rianto said that we have to finish at 10. We still have like 30 minutes to go. I'm still inviting for the next respondent. First, from the senior, Pak Nanang Estaruf. Selamat pagi, Pak Nanang.
Good morning, Dr. Aven.
Oke, selamat pagi, Pak. Old soldier never dies, Pak ya. And I'm also inviting Pak Yasrul, GM Makassar ATS Center. Selamat pagi, Pak Yasrul.
Selamat pagi, Mr. Aven.
Selamat pagi, Makassar. And the next I'm still.
Sorry.
Okay. The next, I'm inviting for the third respondent, Pak Endaryono, GM Jakarta ATS Center. Pak Endaryono, selamat pagi. Pak Endaryono, selamat pagi. I'm still inviting for some branches from NF Indonesia. If you have some opinion, responses, I'm inviting you to just to raise your hand. Okay, Pak Endaryono, you are on the third on queue for the response. So for the first, I'm inviting Pak Nanang Estaruf for 3 minutes response to these topics of discussions. Pak Nanang, the meeting is yours, Pak.
Everyone in Jakarta, especially for Director Safety, Pak Bambang Yanto, the panelist and presenter, and also good evening for Dr. Afen and also Pak Petrus PD. I try to remind regarding about all the systems and NOSS. I believe that NOSS is one of part of the monitoring the safety. I was already leading this field on the air navigation since 15 years ago. And thank you very much to Pak Avencena. He let me remind the 15 years ago what I'm doing at what I have did at that time. At the time, I'm following starting from the French one into the ANSP, and when I am 1 year before the retiring, I tried to make from the ANSP and down to the regional air navigation planning and into national planning. And that's what I talked about the safety to be reached in the blue book on the air navigation, the blue book in by the DPC. I remember that the value to reach this system from the 2004 until 2024 is the value of 99.99995 point. And this morning, I got the information from Bambang Dianto that the safety was already for the operation 99%. It's not yet, but our target is the time 99.999. What does that mean? That means it's one operational, which means 100,000 activity in years. So as our field is on the CNSTN, that means the CNSTN is only allowed to not operation within the 6 minutes in 1 year. This is also the our target is also not just only the safety for the operation, it's also for the CNSTN as the last info regarding about the instrument manufacturer, CNS, ITM equipment. So, it's target is to include all things. And the last system for the RTSP on the 2024, I believe that must be to reach the RTSP. What is that the RTSP means? It's required total system performance. And now I know that the NOSS is already a step by step. You know, it's implemented performance-based navigation. But I don't hear about performance-based communication and also performance-based for research. That is a step to reach the target RTSP. That is the our reminder from 15 years ago that we have a target. The safety is 99.9999, so 95. So just only missing 0.00001. I don't know what is the position our navigation system right now. But including the information, this morning I hear from Director Safety is 99%. There is our small clinic regarding the presented by the navigation from the user pilots and the safety from the Garuda. I'm proud to hear this. But remember, on the 2004, the target of the Indonesia is 99.9999. How to reach that? I don't know, because I was already 15 years ago. I believe knew the director at the present to reach that. Thank you very much, Dr. Alvin. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you, Pak Nanang. Very important reminder from the senior. And for the next respondent, I'm inviting Pak Yasrul, GM Makassar. Pak Yasrul, for the 3 minutes, the meeting is yours, Pak.
Terima kasih. Selamat pagi, Pak Afen.
Selamat pagi, Pak. Silakan, Pak.
Pagi para panel dan partisipan. Good evening to Mr. Fitz. Thank you for this good presentation, and that's very interesting. Hopefully, it can be applied to all ANSP brands. Maybe I will do survey. I hope we can do survey on the first 21 and implementation of NOSS. There are 2 questions for all the panelists. For the first, how long a period of the NOSS, and the second question, at the brand consisting several sectors, will we have to survey all sector or not? How we choose the selecting the sector we want to survey? Thank you for Mr. Apan and all guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Yasrul. For the next, I'm inviting Pak Endaryono. Pak Endaryono. Pak Endaryono from Jakarta. Okay, Pak. For the 3 minutes, the meeting is yours, Pak. Please.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Alvensena. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Vic, Mr. Bambang Rianto, and all participants on this morning. Sorry, I'm from Jakarta Air Traffic Service Center, General Manager on Soekarno-Hatta Airport. Sorry, I was monitoring about the presentation since this morning, but I want to ask to Mr. Vic. Mr. Vic, how are you, Mr. Vic?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, Mr. Vic, sorry. Only one question for you. This is as an IQ expert, I want to ask to you, what should Indonesia do in the early big stages of implementing NOSS? Yeah, this is the question for you. Maybe you can more explain about this. Yeah, so what Indonesia do about in the early big stages of implementing NOSS, NOSS. So because I want to know for Indonesia air provider, air navigation service provider in Indonesia. That's enough for you. Only one question. Thank you very much. Morning.
Morning, Pak. Terima kasih, Pak Endaryono. Since I don't see any other respondents raise the hands, so I will give to each speakers, starting from Pak Bambang Rianto and then continue by Vic, and then continue by Captain Bernard Partogi. One of you have maximum 10 minutes. Since I have very limited time, so as the timekeeper, I'm sorry, Pak Bambang Rianto, you have maximum 10 minutes to give your closing statement to all the respondents and questions, which is probably appears in the question and answers. But for all the participants, both panelists and attendees, for sure your question and answer will be recorded by NOSS Indonesia, by Mr. Vic and Pak Bernard Partogi, and hopefully you can email, you can correspondence for the question and answer. So, but before that, I'm going to give you some information that since several time ago, I have some communications with Pak Novi Pantarianto, with Pak Nake, and some fellows from NOSS Indonesia. I have also tried to connect with some expert from NAF Canada, and I find one, but unfortunately, is still unable to join this meeting because of we're still in the lockdown session, so we have a difficult time in Canada at the moment. But for sure, for the next discussion, I can invite him from NAF Canada to join for deeper discussion. Even also from Mr. Herman Petrus, he just texted me that apologize to all of you that I cannot to attend, but for sure for the next meeting, he will try as best as he can to join the discussions. So please, Pak Bambang Rianto, for your 10 minutes, the meeting begin.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Fen. First, speak in bahasa. First, ya.
Silakan Pak. Silakan Pak.
Oke, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh untuk teman-teman, luar biasa partisipasinya, diskusinya pada hari ini, yaitu dalam rangka terkait diskusi NOSS. NOSS memang ini adalah sesuatu yang sudah lama, tetapi baru kita memulai. Jujur, ini barang lama tetapi baru kita memulai. Jadi di sini adalah salah satunya adalah untuk menyamakan persepsi dari mana kita memulai NOSS, kemudian tujuan akhir bagaimana kita menjalankan NOSS, dan tujuan akhirnya seperti apa. Satu yang saya merubah dan kami merubah, ini kita polanya tidak seperti pemadam kebakaran yang bereaksi hanya apabila terjadi sesuatu. Dari itu yang sifatnya reaktif, kita rubah menjadi sesuatu yang proaktif. Bagaimana caranya? Ya dengan seperti inilah, dengan bersinergi 4A atau 5A, airline, airport authority, dan stakeholder yang lainnya, akademisi yang juga nanti pada saatnya akan kita libatkan, dan lembaga-lembaga training. Karena kita memulai sesuatu pasti dari akademisi. Kita memulai sesuatu adalah dari pendidikan. Nah, di situ kita akan mulai menanamkan culture. Sehingga dari yang reaktif ini kita rubah menjadi proaktif. Dan di satu saat kita akan menjadi prediktif. Itu cita-cita kami. Itu cita-cita bersama, sehingga NOSS itu adalah bukan suatu yang solusi. NOSS ini adalah awal. NOSS itu bukan akhir. NOSS tapi adalah awal, karena tadi yang dipresentasikan oleh Vic. Number one is data. Data. That's very important. That's very important to implementation NOSS. How we implementation NOSS without data? That's right, Vic. That's the data first, and how do we organize the data and resources? That's the number two. And number three is the target of the NOSS. Yeah, the target of the NOSS. That's very important for us. Dari saya itu, tapi dari yang Pak tadi katakan Pak Nanang, saya mohon maaf saya kurang jelas, tapi saya sudah secara ini saya jawab di question and answer Pak Nanang kalau masih ada di sini. That's I want to ask with Mr. Fix first. How we start with the association, the ATC association, and number two, the number two question is the main source for the observation is ATC. That's right. What about the engineering? What about the engineering and other resources? Can we input them to our NOSS program? That's all. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih Pak Bambang Rianto untuk tanggapannya. For the next, I'm inviting Vic van der Westhausen for your 10 minutes. You have a lot of work to do, Vic. Many questions addressed to you. So the meeting is yours. Start from now.
So many difficult questions so late at night. I think all the questions that I've listened to and what I've answered online, very valid. NOSS is something new to most people. And one of the questions that was asked is that how do you start NOSS? If you're not very familiar, I'm not trying to say this is what Indonesia should do. But one of the ways organizations try to identify what to do or how to go about it is to maybe get a NOSS workshop or a NOSS seminar. Like Dr. Afen said, we get people under this expertise in this area and really explain what all the different steps are that you need to do in more detail than what we could do tonight. We did not have time for that. I think areas which I covered were Panaki, where you explained all the current procedures and the NAVAIDs. That shows the interest of Indonesia trying to enhance safety, which is very important. I like what the captain from Batik Air said. That was very good information, knowing how well the airlines are doing. Coming back to some of the questions, and I'll answer how to start. I'll answer that in the last summary. I would start with a workshop, then and once you've done it, you know what you want to do, commence a steering or establish a steering committee. You identify observers, which needs to come out of air traffic control, maybe out of instructors, and conduct training and then develop the plan. But like somebody said, this is resource intensive. So because, and I'll come back to the engineering now, because you need to observe ATCs, you need ATCs to do it, and many countries do not have enough or sufficient resources to do that. So you cannot bring it from another country. You cannot bring it in from ICAO. You will have to fund it in resources within your own area to do the training. Then coming back to what was said, the data and the resources that was mentioned, very important and absolutely correct. You need it. How do you implement NOSS and where do you start? And how do you work with the ATC Association? Being an air traffic controller, being part of the association like many of you have, air traffic controller is not easy to work with. We always joked and say they have an RC factor, resistance to change. They don't want any changes. Don't bring me any changes. I like what I'm doing. And I think in a way, NOSS is because of that. You listen, you go in there, you put a qualified guy next, a senior guy next to another controller, see where you can improve the procedures, because it's proactive. It wants to see how the ANS or the ATS provider can benefit from that. Where can you shorten procedures? We know aerodrome CDM, we talk about CDM. That's part of it in a way. Because only then, when you work together with that, you have the association on the seminar, the workshop. I will get him to somebody else to explain it to them. Because for you to explain it is sometimes more difficult. People don't believe their own people. They believe it less than they believe foreign people sometimes. So I will get the association in. I will get the management in. I will do a workshop or a seminar and explain to them the advantages and the benefits that the company as a whole can get out of it, and air traffic control specific. And then somebody asked me the question about the rejection. Now, this is our ICAO recommendation. You will have to decide locally whether you want that to happen or not. No air traffic controller likes somebody to come and sit next to him and look over his shoulder. And then he thinks this guy is going to use that information to management. I'm going to end up in trouble. So it's absolutely necessary that you get the association and the air traffic controllers on your side before you start with NOSS. I hope I've covered it in general. If there's more specific questions, please do not hesitate. Send me an email. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Vic. I can see your sweat. Okay, for the next, I'm inviting Captain Bernard Partogi. Captain Bernard, untuk 10 menitnya dimulai dari sekarang. Silakan, Pak.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Alven. Sekali lagi mungkin pertama-tama, first of all, thank you Pak Bambang and the team, all Airnav Indonesia, and also Mr. Petrus from ICAO for very impressive meeting this morning, or maybe in the evening in Montreal. But it's a very fruitful discussions, and we already start in the same platform. I think we already start in the same vision, how to emphasize and how to move forward our safety program for the futures. Like Pak Bambang mentioned before, instead of we do the reactive phase, we try to pull everybody back to the proactive. So in terms of the proactive elements, as the SMS implementation, there are some programs may contribute to the proactive, to emphasize the proactive program. One of the NOSS, let's say the survey observations, like what we have in airlines, we call LOSA or LOAS, whatever the program is. That's the main fundamental program that we agree to proactive identify where the hazard is, where the threat in our operational scope and perspective. So based on that, we already start in the same platform. We agreed to move forward in proactive way. So in terms of the proactive, we do agree we need a lot of data. But talking about the data, the more data that we have, the more we may emphasize the program. But to match data also may put us in a kind of difficult area as well. So the more data is not only the data that we have, but the data analysis must be integrated. So the data that we have to analyze, and after we analyze, we try to integrate it. So this morning meeting, a kind of very comprehensive and integrated meetings. Like Pak Bambang said, there are 4 A there: airport, airlines, and Airnav, and also incoming futures. We're gonna join also the scientific base. But the final goal is we try to integrate the data analysis to make a kind of collaborative decision making, because we believe the air traffic controls, or for us in airlines as the air operators or regulators or any kind of stakeholders, cannot work separately. We are in the same chain of the process. So start from there. We gather the data, we analyze the data, we try to more frequent to integrate the data to make final output as the collaborative decision making. So to emphasize our collaborative decision making, we need to develop also where the program gonna be addressed to, where the objective of the program that we're gonna develop to be. So that's, I think, the final quote from me. The more frequent that we can sit together, discuss with this kind of very fruitful discussion, we may identify our hazard, in air traffic controls area or in our airlines or area, but we gonna be integrated each other. So we believe we may emphasize or enhance our safety performance in the future. So once again, thank you everyone. Be safe and be healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Bernard Partogi, for very holistic quotations as a closing remark from you. As the timekeeper, we have like still 5 minutes to 10. So I will not to conclude this webinar because I believe we are going to
Mr. Pick.
Okay, because I believe we are going to continue with next future discussions about this safety issue, NOSS issue, and from our side in Montreal, we are going to offer some expert as Herman Pretoria from the Air Navigation Commission's IQ. We have also Joel Marley, PhD from Human Factor Specialist at Transport Canada. For the next sessions, for the more deeper discussions, Mrs. Joel is like NOSS expert working for NAV Canada also. So and still we are reaching a console. So but at least at the moment now we are in merging ideas that emphasizing collaborative decision making is very important for implementation of normal operation safety survey to the better and better aviation safety. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, again to the speaker, Pak Bambang Rianto, Mr. Vic Petruswandowitzhausen, Captain Bernard Partogi, to all of the panelists, attendees. Now I see 176 participants still stay to the webinar. Thank you very much. We will back again to continue discussion in a very near future. Oke, sekali lagi terima kasih Bapak-bapak, Ibu-ibu untuk pertemuan yang sangat berharga ini. Untuk selanjutnya kita akan bicarakan kemudian diskusi-diskusi lanjutan tentang ini sebagai follow up dan tidak lanjutnya. Sekali lagi terima kasih. Mohon maaf apabila ada kesalahan. Kami sebelumnya panitia mohon nanti bisa disampaikan alamat email dari para speakers dan email panitia sehingga nanti bisa di-reach apabila ada dokumen atau apapun yang bisa di-share kepada kawan-kawan para partisipan semua. Sekali lagi terima kasih. Mohon maaf yang sebesar-besarnya. Billahi taufik wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Mas Afin.
Thank you, Captain Prita.
Terima kasih, Pak.
Hai, good luck, Captain Bernard. Well done.
Thank you, Cap. Makasih, Cap. Thank you, Senior.
Thank you
Terima
semuanya.
kasih. Pak Afen, terima kasih.
Izin
lanjutannya jangan lupa.
Pak Afen.
Serem,
Terima
Pak.
kasih.
Soalnya Pak Direktur ngasih waktu 2 jam, nggak boleh lewat loh. Gitu, Pak. Jadi kita mohon izin strict di waktu.
Pak Afen kan istirahat dulu.
Oh siap. Nggih. Kita bisa
Senior Pak
lanjutkan.
Nanang, waduh.
Oke, sebelumnya barangkali kami akan sampaikan secara berkala CSAS dan KKIP melaksanakan webinar. Untuk webinar berikutnya kita akan mengambil topik Cyber Security in Air Traffic Management. CSAS silakan disampaikan teasernya.
Siap. Pak Novi.
Siap, Pak Nanang, apa kabar? Amin, matur
ganteng,
suwun.
Pak.
Siap, tunggu Pak. Mampir Pak.
Siap, aku di Mataram nih, nggak bisa pergi takut COVID. Udah 9 bulan nih.
Ya nggak apa-apa, kan ada keluarga baru di sana. Ya udah, izin living ya. Kasih, assalamualaikum semuanya.
Terima kasih, waalaikumsalam. Terima kasih
Pak Afen, sekali lagi terima kasih.
Terutama Pak Afen ini mantap nih.
Bapak-bapak sekalian, terima kasih. Teman-teman GM, terima kasih.
Briefing ya.